Welcome to the ZIZO Effect podcast, where we talk about all things gamified. In this episode, we're stepping away from the leaderboards to address a more pressing issue: employee turnover and engagement. What are they? Why do they matter? We'll unpack these concepts, digging into the causes and the consequences of staff changes and why understanding this cycle is crucial for every organization. So, ready your minds as we unpack the challenges of engagement and the impact of attrition. Get ready, it's game time. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the ZIZO Effect podcast. I am your host, Andrew J. Reimers, and I was my high school senior class president.
Nice. I did not know that about you.
With me, as always, our in-house gamification expert and co-host, Mr. Jimmy Shabbat.
Well, I don't know if I ever told you, but I was Scrooge in my 6th grade play, A Christmas Carol.
Wow.
Played the lead role.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
And it's funny how life imitates art.
Bah, humbug.
No, Jimmy, thank you for joining me again. It's always a pleasure to sit down and talk with you and discuss all things gamified, as we say. Hopefully by now our listeners are privy to how we like to start our shows.
Yeah.
And that is with a little segment we like to call
Name the Game.
Now, as a quick recap, our wonderful producers behind the scene, Alex and Emma, are going to play a song from a video game. Round one, it's up to us. We're challenging each other. You're currently in the lead with a record of 1-0-1. I am sitting at 0-1-1, excuse me. And we'll see who comes out on top this week. But then...
Hold on. Let's make sure that we got, because we don't have a buzzer yet. We're going to have to get a buzzer. Just yell it out. You got it. Name it. We obviously don't know the name of this song or the name of the game. But yes, after we get a chance to compete, we give our audience a chance to compete, where we play a second song where they have to name the game. The theme.
We might provide a few hints.
Yeah, we've done so in the past couple episodes, so I don't see us deviating, unless, of course, we don't know the game. So why don't we get started with the first game, and then we can let our audience know how they can participate in the second game.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. Emma. Hold on, I know this. Give me 1 second.
Mega Man.
I don't know if it's Mega Man. Is it Mega Man? Wow.
Mega Man!
Nice.
I got it! All right.
Nice.
Oh.
I was thinking, hold on, there's a game, I don't know if not Street Fighter, like a Kung Fu game, and it was 2D. And that's what I thought it was. I can't remember the name.
Double Dragon?
No, maybe it was Double Dragon that I was thinking of. But yes, now I did play Mega Man. Now they had 3 of them, right? Mega Man 1.
Mega Man had like 9.
Mega Man 9?
I think.
I remember I played the first 3, and they were great. And
Yeah.
they kept on getting better and better as they went, and it's iconic. I don't know if I would put it up with Zelda and Super Mario Brothers, but it's one that I played frequently when I was younger.
And you know what's funny about that is, I mean, I haven't played Mega Man. I have an NES Classic. I have a Switch. I have all that. I haven't played Mega Man since I was a kid, and it's incredible the way that brings back these memories. And I can actually remember a friend of mine, Dan M., that I play. He owned Mega Man. I never owned it, and he played. And I used to want to go to hang out with him. Pretty much the only reason was to play Mega Man.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know if we had talked about this on previous episodes, but I know that you and I had talked about it, going to somebody's house to play games. My son is turning 17. I'll tell a quick story before I get back to this other story about playing together. But I gave him his first controller to play when he was 2. It wasn't on. I had it turned off because I wanted to play and I didn't want him to distract me from playing, but he felt he was playing along with me. And when he was like around 3, right, after about a year playing, we were playing Lego Batman. I remember the game. I said, you know what? Let me just turn it on. He's going to have to learn at some point. So I turned on his control. He knew how to play. He was playing right alongside with me like he was playing the whole time. I was blown away.
That is so cool.
But anyways, fast forward. That was 14 years ago. He's about to turn 17. He's an avid gamer. I get a lot of inspiration from him, and I get a lot of feedback about how to build ZIZO through modern game mechanics. But he plays with his friends all the time. Nobody ever comes over. They play online. And for us, I remember, like you said, one of the friends, if you're in a tight group circle, you wouldn't all buy the same game. You would buy different games, trade games, and go over to each other's houses if you wanted to play together.
Yeah.
And to me, I love modern networking and the ability to play with anybody at any time, but it's just taken away from that fun atmosphere. There's no more sleepovers. Yeah. My daughter has a ton, but my son, they're always online.
Yeah. I got smoked by an 8-year-old in virtual bowling on the Oculus the other day, but I digress.
Did he talk crap?
Oh yeah. We were talking the whole time. It was pretty funny.
All right, we got another song to name the game. So.
Yes. So this is the audience's chance to participate and to win a fabulous prize. And in our first batch of prizes, we have this wonderful limited edition, wonderfully crafted ZIZO hat with beautiful design. It's game time all on the inside. All you need to do is join us at Play ZIZO on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Comment your answer, and we will choose a winner and send out the hat right away.
Don't forget our website at www.playzizo.com.
Maybe that'll be my gimmick for getting the website.
Yeah, you're always missing it. That's okay. I forgive you. Let's move forward. Emma, Alex, go ahead with the second song.
I got it.
This one, it took me a while. I mean, we're giving clues.
Yeah, please.
Well, I mean, this one's a personal experience. I didn't have, because this was exclusive to one of the gaming systems.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that gaming system. So I didn't play that game. So it was less familiar to me, but I remember it. Here's a clue. It's a recent movie.
It is.
So there's your clue. Let's not give away any clue. Remember, go on.
I don't think it's anywhere in the studio either. No.
I don't see it.
Okay.
All right.
So chime in on social media. Let us know your answer, and we will choose a winner from there. But Jimmy, this is a gamification podcast, and we're here to talk about gamification and all the ways that it works in our lives. However, there's a very big problem happening in the modern workforce. And I think it's important that we get into this before we talk solutions. Sure. It's important that we understand the problem. I'm going to ask you flat out, what is attrition? Because I'm going to let you know that my only experience with the word attrition before I started working here was in pro wrestling, and two big sweaty guys would be slapping the meat out of each other, and the commentators would talk about how it's a war of attrition, and I didn't really know what it meant. I knew it sounded pretty cool, but why don't you tell me, when it comes to the modern workforce, what is attrition?
That's pretty funny. I've heard that term before as well. I've never connected the two either, the war of attrition, but attrition is essentially turnover, right? Somebody leaves, they quit, or they get fired, right? It's employee turnover. That's the simple answer for what is attrition.
Okay. I think a lot of people would just come back and say, well, yeah, that's just the cost of doing business, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's normally you would think so, but we have a problem in today's day and age where that number is skyrocketed.
Yeah. I mean, everything that I've seen is it's really remarkable that anyone even has jobs. But do you think it's fair, or would it be uncalled for to maybe ask this question? You can tell me if you don't really have an answer to it. But who is quitting?
Yeah.
Who's leaving their jobs, for whatever the reasons might be? Is it a general part of the modern workforce? It's not just people retiring. That's not attrition or anything like that. Who is quitting?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a valid question. And if you recall, during the pandemic, there were terms thrown out there: the Great Resignation. More recently, the Quiet Quit, the war for labor, right? The war for talent. I think was the exact language. But it for a short period of time, it impacted almost everybody, every industry. But it primarily is impacting on a higher level frontline workers, younger generation, um, you know, jobs more so than careers. You're not looking at specialized workers. We're talking about attorneys, accountants, high level skilled workers. They're not quitting left and right. But for frontline workers, we're talking about maybe fast food, retail, call centers. Um, we're seeing spikes that have never been seen before in history of the workforce.
Well, it makes sense. A global pandemic will cause things to change, and that I think it's important then to understand the primary reasons
Mm-hmm.
why people are now quitting their jobs. So we've already talked about the workforce.
No, not enough.
Not enough.
Not enough. No.
So what do you think we should do? Should we define the workforce?
Oh, define the workforce? Yeah, I think we should. I think when you look at the modern workforce, um, I remember. I'm just going to take you back, tell you a little story. Back in 2018, I was at an industry conference, and I had designed a system that's the original iteration of ZIZO. Brought it back to market in 2012. We're not going to jump into that, but it was something that was more about performance management and accountability management, just transparency into access into information. But we're at a conference and everybody was talking about the same thing. These numbers are going up. What is going on? And at that point, this was pre-pandemic, so it wasn't directly related to the pandemic, but it was a new workforce, right? So when you look at generationally, I'm part of Gen X. Millennials came after us. Everybody used to complain about the millennials. They're so disengaged. Gen Z is different. Gen Z is they had just started entering the workforce. It's the youngest generation, and they are very decisive. They're very unique. They're the first generation that grew up with technology in their hands. So I don't know if you recall, we talked on one of the previous episodes. We put technology in our kids' hands. This is the first generation that literally, they had iPads and iPhones as their form of entertainment, their first forms of entertainment, watching YouTube videos and such.
It really works in potty training too.
It works in so many different ways. I mean, look, I'm not exempt from this. I'm one of the early parents who's like, hey, here, we're at a restaurant, watch this video or play this game. But that comes, there's collateral damage with that, right? They're super distracted. Their minds are conditioned with technology. And there's something called TikTok brain where, people need something different. Every 30 seconds or 10 seconds, 15 seconds, they get bored. That condition contributes, like they can't even watch full feature films because they need something new, and that scrolling. So that's one of the primary reasons of the uptick is the new generation. They're just different. Another one is the gig economy. I mean, you're a musician, you've heard the term, but most people don't understand, well, what is the gig economy? They're thinking if it's just an economy. Is it just, how is it like inflation? But the gig economy is a way where people work for themselves and they're contract employees. And there's a bunch of different organizations, applications, corporations that they can go and work for. So the most familiar is Uber or Lyft, right? They can be a driver, right? And they're their own business. They have their own car. And they go drive whenever they want. They punch in whenever they want. They leave whenever they want. They can make as much money as they want or as little money as they want, however much they want to work. But it's not just that. It's things like Instacart, where they can go shopping for people, DoorDash, deliver fast food. Even things like Airbnb and Turo, which you can go buy houses and rent them out or buy cars and rent them out to people. And so they're building their own businesses, and then Upwork or Fiverr, where they can go online if they have a special talent. So it's not limited to just those kind of frontline tasks and jobs, But if you're a graphic designer, if you're an accountant, if you're a data entry person, if you're a programmer, you can go on there and just get gigs, right? Jobs, bid on projects, and work anytime you want.
Yeah. You know, another example that comes to mind, and it cracks me up to think about it, because I saw this happen almost in real time. But I think another contributor for employee turnover is rising wages. And the reason I laugh is because there's this area, I won't say specifically where it is. You know, we're in the Buffalo, New York area, but there's a Burger King across the street from a McDonald's. And I watched them now hiring $15 an hour, now hiring $15.50 an hour, now hiring $16 an hour, now hiring $16.50, rising wages. You talk about frontline workers and people who are doing these jobs. Maybe they aren't career positions, but they're paying the bills for now. It's getting by. They might be younger. They might be part-time, whatever it is. But now there are so many opportunities to just make more money elsewhere that it's easy to quit because they're not invested in what they're doing. You mentioned disengagement. They don't care about the company they work for. Sure. They don't care about what their role is in contributing and helping that company succeed. All they're thinking about is themselves. And I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, but it's just the way the current world is. There's a lot of other opportunities out there for people to be able to. It's a lot easier to quit a job now and get another job than maybe it was for my father or my grandfather back in the day.
Yeah, and you're partly right, partly wrong. I think people want to think like compensation is the only reason why people take a job or why they would quit a job, but it's usually the secondary reason. If they don't feel like they have a sense of purpose or a sense of belonging, or they're getting some sort of enjoyment, some sort of intrinsic motivation, then they will leave and they would look for something with bigger, better. They would be more attracted to that sign that's on Burger King that says $15.50 an hour. And yes, rising wages. So those companies, McDonald's, Burger King, other fast food restaurants, big box stores, they would normally pay minimum wage. They used to pay minimum wage, and minimum wage was never intended to be a living wage. Minimum wage was for jobs. People in high school, kids in high school, kids while they're going to college, they can make some money on the side. These are jobs that don't take a tremendous amount of talent or experience, which you can pay. And really what's happened is there's a push to increase minimum wage because people are feeling like it's not a livable wage. And it was, again, never intended, completely different podcast. We won't jump into that. But I do recall when in that 2018, and we are in New York State, you mentioned Buffalo, we're in New York State, minimum wage started to jump. I remember, the lowest I remember it being for me was $3.50, maybe even 15 cents.
Really?
Yeah. And when it jumped, it would jump by like 10 cents.
I do. I remember when it jumped. My first job, sorry to cut you off.
Sure.
My first job, I was hired for $5.15 an hour. And then there was a state mandated increase. It went up to $5.25 an hour.
How excited were you?
Oh, it was great.
Awesome.
I was looking at new cars.
Yeah, no, you never got any sort of economic training. Then it's like an extra 10 cents an hour is not going to get you a car. But in any case, yes, minimum wage is based state by state. The federally mandated minimum wage in the United States is $7.25. But in New York State, I believe it's somewhere around $15. In California, it's $15.50, $13.25 in Arizona, and some cities even have higher rates.
I think DC is at 17.
Denver, Colorado is at $17.29. Yeah, I think DC might be $17 as well. 7 states have a minimum wage of $15 or more. And again, totally different podcast, totally different conversation. But what that does is it kills small businesses. Yeah. Small businesses can't compete. And it's a contributor to inflation. And again, the big winners are the big companies who can absorb that initial rush. And then as the competition goes away, they just raise their cost. And again, that's where inflation comes in. But you're right. It is a huge contributor to attrition because now they can quit what used to be considered a comfortable office job, making, $12.50, $13, $15 an hour, maybe even with some compensation, bonus compensation for hitting certain goals, and just go to Target and make $24 an hour as an associate. No experience necessary. Yeah. So it's definitely a huge contributor to attrition. One other one, disengagement, right? And that can be tied to technology, that can be tied to the younger generation, but nobody's exempt. It is human behavior. If you don't like your job, if it's mundane, it's repetitive, you're going to quit. You're going to be disengaged. Millennials, I remember this was a huge topic of conversation when millennials entered the workforce. Disengagement. They wouldn't quit. They would just stay at work, and it's what's now considered the quiet quit, where you're collecting a paycheck, you're just really not doing any work, you're not productive. And actually disengagement is costing companies globally in the trillions. I believe it's $7.8 trillion in reduced productivity because of disengagement.
I'm glad you brought that up because that actually transitions perfect into the next topic that I wanted to mention because, there's employee turnover and attrition is, of course, a huge problem. I had no idea that it was in the trillions of dollars.
And I want to correct myself. It's $8.8 trillion.
$8.8 trillion.
$8.8 trillion for disengagement. That's not attrition.
Oh, that's not even attrition. That's
not even
just
attrition.
disengagement.
Just
So we're talking, oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Well, then why don't we talk about, there's an impact. Now, people are leaving jobs. I'm sure you're used to this. You go somewhere, they're understaffed. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the impact that we're seeing on businesses because of this attrition and disengagement problem?
Sure. I mean, we just mentioned disengagement, what that does to businesses globally. And that is very difficult to directly measure, right? And the impact is kind of, they've painted a broad stroke. There's a Gallup study that an article that came out that proposed that study. We can put that in our notes here if people want to go read it. But the impact is pretty substantial financially, when you're looking at attrition. So you had mentioned earlier, well, isn't that the cost of doing business, right? Attrition, people quit, people move on, especially in frontline workers. These are normally jobs. In the past, high attrition rates were considered 30%, 40%, 50% was really pushing it. In some industries, you would just have traditionally high attrition. We talked about, again, with frontline workers. Those are usually jobs that people kind of go through and cycle in when they're younger, and then they go on and move on to their careers. But there's a direct relationship to costs for businesses. And I've heard in one of our prospects dealing with 20% attrition per month. That's over 240%. That is 240%. I don't know exactly what their numbers are, but 240% annual. So if you have a staff, and they were a big company, we're talking thousands of agents. If you have a staff of 100 people, you're hiring 240 people every year, training them, onboarding them, training them, paying them. There's no additional benefit to the company. Actually, there's some intangible costs to that even cost your company more than the hiring cost.
Yeah, I mean that's turning over your staff twice over in a year. I mean that's no joke.
That's big.
No, that's huge.
That's not the norm, but that is an extreme instance that it was presented to me. But I've heard consistently that attrition is over 100%.
Yeah, that is really insane to hear. I can only imagine what it does because there's ripple effects.
Sure.
Obviously these businesses are struggling and it's costing them X amount of money per new employee they have to hire. And, I think I've heard, what is it? You have to hire 100 people to get 50 to show up to training, to get 25 to complete the training, to get 12 to show up on their first day, and then 3 to last the first week or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And
that's a consistent story that I've heard.
And while all this is happening and you're training and you don't have qualified workers doing the job. So things like customer service, productivity, all of those things decrease as well. And the ripple effect is felt so far beyond just what's going on internally with that business, but it's felt by its customers. And I know that holds a special place with me because I take pride in the fact that our customer service is kind of the best.
Yeah.
And, he said humbly.
Yeah. No, it's true.
And ultimately what it can do to damage a reputation of a business.
Yeah. Those are some of the indirect costs, right? So you mentioned those. So damage to the reputation, which can be a domino effect to loss of customers and loss of loyalty. But I want to go back for a second to the direct cost. Okay. Because, people measure this and I've read articles, I've done a ton of research on the cost of attrition. And I've seen numbers as low as $4,500. We're talking about in the United States, $4,500 per new hire. I've also heard numbers as high as 60% of an annual salary, things that can go as high as 30, 40,000 per new hire. I can't tell you what the exact cost is. It's going to vary from industry to industry, company to company, and of course their hiring practices. But I will share with you how you can measure your cost of attrition. And I can also share with you how to measure attrition, because those are two very important things to actually know because nobody has this as a line item when you're doing your annual budget. Nobody's saying, hey, how much are we spending this year on attrition? They don't put that aside. It is, like you said, kind of a cost of doing business, but how many people are measuring what that actual cost is? And it's skyrocketed. So maybe we could start with the cost of a new hire, right? And this is something that people ask me frequently, or when I ask them, they don't quite know it, right? So I try to kind of lead them down this path. But number one is your recruiting cost. What are you spending to recruit people? You can use headhunters, which are very expensive. If anybody's ever used a headhunter, it's about 20%. I've seen rates as high as 30%, of the annual salary of the person that you're recruiting.
Well, I'm in the wrong business.
Yeah, it's high. I mean, they do have some guarantees that they're going to last more than 90 days. And they can take some of that work off your plate. So there's some benefits there, but it's very expensive. And depending on, the size of your workforce and how much you're hiring, I mean, it's probably not the right thing to do. So, posting on LinkedIn, Workable, or Indeed, there's a cost to that. Once you've gotten people to actually respond to your ad and fill out an application or submit their resumes, then you have interviewing, right? How many people are doing interviews? Nowadays, when you're hiring for a remote workforce, a lot of the interview process is done online. So you've got tools that you have to invest in to help you manage those interviews. Those cost money. So what is your tech stack that you're using to help you manage this interview process? And sometimes it's not a single person that makes a decision. There's usually layers. There's a first interview, a second, a third, and so on and so forth. Reference checks, background checks, those cost money to try to make sure that they fall within your acceptable range. And, do they have a criminal record? Do they have financial, a low credit score? When you're dealing with financial institutions, they look at those sort of things, and those cost money. Then once you've decided to hire them, there's a cost to hiring, right? You have to onboard them. You have to do all of the paperwork, get them on your payroll. You have to, any of your tools and your systems that you need to put them on your telephone system, put them on your, whether it's Office or Google, that costs money. All of your other tech stacks that, they have to use, the technologies, the software platforms, and that they have to use to do their jobs. You need to enter them into those systems, and you're paying for those licenses as well. Then you have training, right? So you can't just hire them and put them on the floor. You have to put them through a training program. I've seen as little as 1 to 2 day training programs, but most are at least a week. Some, if you're in regulated industries, like the financial sector, you're talking about, in some instances, I've seen 2 months of training. You're not just paying them, while they're in training, you're paying the trainers, and the indirect cost is, instead of that training department working with, your existing workforce, your existing staff, and doing advanced level trainings and upskilling your current staff, you're constantly being, training new hires.
That's a really great point. I hadn't even thought of that. No, I mean, you bring up a lot there, and obviously that cost is maybe far more than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, do the math.
It's it's tough. It's definitely a problem. It's definitely something that you're not the only person to have experienced it. I know a lot of people that are listening right now and tuning in right now that are running businesses are probably experiencing the same thing and realizing, oh man, maybe we do need to budget for this because this problem doesn't seem to be getting any better.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll get into some solutions as to where that can help. As we close today's episode, we've talked about frontline workers, establish what that means. And I think it's important that people understand what we mean when we say frontline workers here on the podcast. We've identified the causes of attrition and what attrition really means. It's not just for pro wrestling, it's for everybody. There is that new generational workforce, the rising wages, the gig economy, and the cost of attrition, which is a lot more than I thought it was going to be. Got to be honest, Jimmy, this all sounds pretty bleak.
Yeah. It's not, this is a unique challenge that we're all facing here.
Yeah. And I think we're going to be tackling a lot of the solutions for these problems in upcoming episodes, but we definitely need a change.
Yes, sir.
As we conclude today's episode, we've navigated through the complexities facing our workforce, from frontline challenges to the economic shifts reshaping our world. Now, this may seem daunting, but it's also a call to action, a signal that we're on the cusp of a transformative era in workforce management. Next week, we'll embark on a journey back in time to explore the evolution of workforce management. We'll critically examine traditional management approaches, identify the key factors that suggest a radical transformation is needed, and how gamification will change the future. Be ready, it's game time.